Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I am Patrick Hall, the proud club advisor of Disability Awareness Club, one of the two student-led clubs that are responsible for putting on this great event. This is the second installment. A couple weeks ago, we had the first panel where we had professionals around the community, a couple folks from here at JJC speak on their perspectives when it comes to design and architecture and that intersection between design and disability. In this event today, you'll be hearing from the perspective of the students, some students from our club, as well as a representative from Leggett, Rachel. Um, to give you a short summary of the first event, we have Leo and Mia, students from the AIAS club, to tell you what you missed. Thanks again for joining.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the second event today. In case you couldn't make the first event, it included educational presentations from 5 professionals. Okay. Our first two, Adam Woke is the Manager of Disability Services at JJC, and Dr. Tracy Morris is our Compliance Officer. They spoke about understanding disability and the transitions from K through 12 to higher education, striving for inclusion, and all the accommodations provided for students with disabilities. We next had Lorian Shainstead, who works at the law firm RCK, to represent ADA in law. She educated us about ADA, the American Disability Act, and how it ensures that those with a disability will receive equal access without discrimination to employment, education, extracurriculars, and opportunities through accommodation and services. Lastly, we had Adam Quigley, who was a project architect at Leggett Architects, and Sylvia Kowak, the leader of Leggett Architects' interior design practice. They showed us how disability and ADA are integrated into architecture and how accommodations affect the design and feeling that a physical space creates. Now joining us, we have Jeff Stronkowski, which is the director of the higher education, principal and chairman of Leggett Architects. So all the panelists that returned today, also Dr. Morris and Lorian Shainstead, are online. They are here to interact with our student panel and provide feedback to the question and answer. So to quickly introduce myself, I am Mia, one of the co-leaders at AIAS Club, and I will be one of the moderators.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leo. Thank you all for coming back. And for anyone who's new, thank you for coming and supporting. I am also the co-leader of the AIAS at JJC and will be the second moderator for today. I just wanted to give a little backstory of how this event happened. So it all perspired last semester in 2021's Main Street when Esley approached my table and we started talking about the importance of disability and awareness and how in architecture and how we should make an event regarding it. One thing led to another, and now here we are today to experience the second of two great events that started from a small idea. This event is all about hearing from the perspective of individuals with disabilities. It is meant to raise awareness of how design and architecture and the physical space is important in the daily life of an individual with a disability. To begin, we would now like to introduce our panelists for today. If you would like additional information, please follow the link on the screen. First, we have Rachel Weisbrock. She's an associate of AIA, a member of the AIA Chicago's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. She obtained her Bachelor's of Architecture degree at Illinois Institute of Technology, served as a president of treasurer of her school's AIAS chapter, and is a member of the Equity and Diversity and Finance Committee of National AIAS. She is currently on track to becoming an accessibility specialist at Leggett Architects Chicago studio.
Next, we have Esley Ramos as a student panelist. She has been involved in multiple clubs and student leadership positions across JJC. She is currently the president of the Disability Awareness Club, the vice president of the Latinos Unidos Club, the secretary of the Collegiate Club Council, and a member of the Active Minds Club and the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship.
Our next student panelist is Juan Zavala and has been an active member of the Disability Awareness Club since 2018 after getting an invite from his friend Esley. He believes that people need to be more empathetic and support each other because we are all in this together. He also instills the message that having a disability does not define you or to limit your potential.
Our next student panelist is Emily Saldivar, and she is the Vice President of the Disability Awareness Club after just joining in 2020. She would love to work in higher education in the future, helping the next generation of college students. Emily is a strong advocate for the diversity of the community and firmly believes that accessibility is important everywhere.
Lastly, we have Mason Patterson as our final student panelist today. He is the current treasurer of the Disability Awareness Club and has been the longest active member of the DAC. Mason has developed a strong passion for the spreading awareness and advocating for those with disabilities.
First, we will have questions and a discussion with the panelists. Then, at the end, if anyone in the audience would like to ask anything, we will have a question and answer portion at the end. So to get us started, would the panelists like to go down the line and say your name, state your disability, how long you've been at JJC, and what you are studying?
Like she said, my name is Rachel Weisbrock. I have a condition called arthrogryposis, which is just a congenital muscle weakness in my legs. Self-proclaimed pretty mild condition, so I've used anything from braces to a wheelchair, crutches, walker, you name it, I've probably used it. I've been at JJC for about an hour and a half. And I did study architecture at IIT in Chicago.
Hi, my name is Esley Ramos, and I've been at JJC since fall of 2017. My major is early childhood to work in childcare. I have an eye condition that causes me to be pretty much blind. It's called retinitis pigmentosa, and where I can only see out of the peripheral. I see blurry, and I can't see more than a foot in front of me. And I use a white cane to help me travel, and many other things to help me get around and do things. And then I'm the current president of Disability Awareness Club.
My name is Emily Saldivar, and I'm the vice president of Disability Awareness Club. And my disability, I don't really tell people this, but I'm finally gonna be open. So I have two invisible disabilities. I'm actually on the autism spectrum. So, and then I'm also have ADHD type 1, which is the inattentive, I think, type. And then I'm actually been here since 2020. So I joined this club my first year when it was online. So I met all these wonderful people here. And I'm majoring in psychology. I do plan on transferring in the spring of next year. So here at JJC, the fall will be my last semester.
Hi, my name is Mason Patterson. I've been here at JJC since the fall of 2016. As they said, I am the current treasurer of Disability Awareness Club. I do not yet have a major, and my disability, I acquired it, so to speak, in 2013. I had a brain avium rupture, which caused a stroke. It's really complicated. And that's me.
Hi, my name is Juan Zavala. I'm 24 years old. My disability is cerebral palsy. There's 5 types of cerebral palsy, which means there's a pyramid of all different kinds of cerebral palsy. But my cerebral palsy basically means I need to use a wheelchair to get around, but I feel everything. I feel every muscle in my body. So which is good. And I could walk with assistance, a walker, or somebody helping me out. So, and I've been at JJC for, I don't know, I've been here since the fall of 2017. So, and I'm going to get an associate's degree in psychology, and God willing, maybe go on from there or try to get a job with my degree. But who knows in this world, in this daily life we live in. So I just got to keep on trucking along, you know? So, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So now we will do the same thing for questions. Just go down the line and answer. And now if any of the professionals would like to comment, feel free, but just do so after an individual has answered. So through your experiences, what does the word accessibility mean to you?
I would say through my experiences, I've kind of just over the past 2 or so years really started to start advocating for my disability. Like the other panelists have said, it's nothing to be ashamed of and it doesn't define us, but it is a part of us. So I didn't want to ignore that anymore, and I wanted to start using my voice for myself and others who maybe don't have access to what I have as opportunities. And I guess in a perfect future, the word accessibility to me hopefully will mean equality and equity for all. And through my experiences, I've kind of defined or compared and contrasted what equality and equity mean because they are not synonymous. And I think that that is really important for a more accessible future moving forward.
For me, accessibility means, in terms of my eye condition, that one of the biggest ways that everything would be like understood in a way of like not being visual. Um, Everything pretty much is based on sight for the most part. So if everything was accessible according to me, I would want everything to pretty much be focused on in a way of like, if you didn't see how would you go about things, and just making things more less visual and more um, ways that you can get around by feel, and not so much of how things look.
For me, accessibility also means like the app. Well, it's different than like Well, obviously accommodations are very important throughout school. I had an IEP, which is Individualized Education Plan, which is for students with disabilities, and it's basically a plan that's written, like by your teachers or the case managers are the ones that were in charge of the transition goals as well as like the other things regarding like accommodations. So I think it was hard for me, like speaking up for myself because I was never very open about my disabilities. Well, I just found out I had like, because I always knew I had autism most of my life, but then I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD till earlier last year. So I think it was hard because I think a lot of those symptoms were mistaken for autism. So I think that was like the correlation, like with the invisible disability. So I think, like I want to be able to be that advocate and be more open. So that's why I want to be able to share my story to help others as well.
In my experiences, so like I said, I had basically the effects of a stroke, so I have very weak left side, and I use an orthotic device on my left leg. It's called an AFO, ankle and foot orthotic, which helps me walk. And that, in my experience, you see everybody be able to walk around with normal abilities. And one day I wasn't able to do everything. So the accessibility of using an orthotic gave me a chance to go back and walk around. Now I'm at school, I'm able to walk through the halls where some people take that for granted. And also because of my left hand, accessibility wise, it makes it hard to manipulate certain objects. So making so it helps to have someone give me a helping hand, no pun intended. And that's pretty much my experience with accessibility.
Well, accessibility for me, what it means to me, that hopefully one day will mean to everybody, that everybody's the same. Everybody needs help one way or another because we, as a society, we have to work together. Um, Nobody does it alone. So, and as as me growing up, I had to advocate for myself at a really young age. Um, and I had to teach myself how to grab stuff from the floor on my own if there's nobody around with me to help me. And I had to go to therapy to help with my muscles, and so I don't become a vegetable or something like that because I use my upper body more than my lower body, and um, it's sometimes difficult because sometimes my body gets stiff, and I have to remind myself keep on moving, like doing my upper body strengths and stuff like that, and um, it having this disability also teaches me that I could teach others um, that even if you have a disability, we're all normal. We all want the same things out of life. We want to find success in life, find love, stuff like that. And to remind everybody, um, no one is the same. Everyone is different and their own unique and special way.
I just want to add to something Juan was talking about, especially when we talk about accessibility from an architecture standpoint, we think about physical spaces. Something Juan had mentioned is that, you know, accessibility for everyone. Like some of the things that students on the panel here need it's a need to get from A to B, regardless, physical, academic, whatever that accommodation is or that accessible feature is, it's necessary. But I think we forget too that when we have universally designed spaces, it actually benefits everybody, disability or not. We've all had our hands full and hit our elbow on the automatic door opener. We've all had to use a ramp because maybe we were carrying a suitcase with us. We've had times, I just the other day was using a screen reader to read through a PDF because I had just a really bad headache, and to have something that could read the audio to me. So I think sometimes I just want to say that because I think it's important sometimes there are some who have a very negative stigma of individuals with disabilities and can see some of these things as being a nuisance, an addition. Oh, now we have to do this and now we have to do that, without recognizing that all of us have strengths and weaknesses and benefit from features that allow better accessibility for everybody. And so I just wanted to build off of that, what Juan said.
Yep, true that.
Lastly, I just want to mention something that caught my attention, especially when I don't remember your name, but you're next to Rachel. Esley, okay, when Esley was talking about, the disability, the visual disability, is we perceive the world through our senses. Vision is just one of 5. So when we're thinking about design is, okay, if we're talking about the disability of vision, is how do we emphasize the feeling of the space? How do we emphasize the sound of the space? How do we even emphasize or think about the smell of the space? So it's just adding another dimension, another layer to design that I believe is extremely important for what you just mentioned, Adam, that universal design, that everybody's welcome, that, I mean, we are all humans, we are all different in some kind of way, but we all need to be part of a whole. So I think that's very important.
I can remember as a young architect almost 30 years ago or over 30 years ago when the ADA law or code first came out, and the profession has been focused on that largely, and it's more for physical handicaps and disabilities. But I think more recently the focus is more on, as Sylvia mentioned and Adam mentioned, universal design, and that's a more holistic approach at accessibility. And I think when we start every project, we try to see what those things are for a given program or client or higher ed space, college, university, what have you. And we try to solve as many of those as you can. But as you can see from just from the panel that we have on the other side there, accessibility is a complicated issue, and there's many things to consider, not just physical disabilities, but also behavioral. And so we do our best to sift through these and see what those issues are at the beginning of every project. And that's, I think, more of the focus going forward. We've moved, yes, the ADA law is still there, and we must comply with it. But we're kind of moving on to kind of a greater look at how to respond to accessibility.
Thank you everyone for your responses and your input. I know everything is important. Everyone's here also in the audience to understand firsthand how the students feel, and also the insight that the professionals give us is very important. I just want to go on to the second question for the student panelists. Do you think the integrated accessibility features in the building work well?
Short answer, I would say they're fine. I think it's sort of echoing what Jeff was saying about the ADA being 30 years old. It's not like disabilities have been the same since the 1990s. I think that it's hard because it's ever changing, and there's no cookie cutter way to go about it. But I think that kind of the traction that this topic has gained over the past, I feel like, year or two even, has been really important to show not just the people that are personally affected by accessibility in the built environment, but everyone is kind of catching on to certain things. And exactly what Adam was saying, like, accessibility and universal design is not just catered towards people with disabilities, but people with strollers or bikes or luggage, or someone who's just lazy one day and doesn't want to take the stairs. I think that there's a sense of empathy that needs to come along with it, that more people have to catch on to in order to have a more successful, inclusive, and universal future. And I think that finally a lot of people are starting to catch on. So I think as long as we can take this traction and just build onto it as best as we can, I think the integration could only get a lot better and more effective and efficient.
I personally think it's getting better, but it definitely varies on building to building. I know in terms of me, like I have some light reception where I can see a little bit better with light. So depending on certain buildings, some buildings are brighter than others, or if there's more windows, it helps. So that definitely can vary between places. And then also another thing that I want to mention is like since I use a cane, my cane can feel it goes on the ground, so it feels the ground. So when the texture changes, I pay attention to that, and it definitely helps me find my way along with hitting walls, honestly, because like I can trail a wall and use my cane and know when to turn and things like that. So depending on the building, I know like here at JJC, I do tend to walk around with someone, but it mainly because on a day-to-day basis, my site actually changes, and sometimes I can just get there faster with people, but I can walk on my own, and that's what I do a lot here. I pay attention to the floor changes and trail the wall and um, just find the different turns and everything. So depending on the buildings, I feel like it's gotten better um, throughout the years, as they were saying, but definitely can use improvement, especially on lighting. I just feel like in so many buildings, light changes from one room to another, and same thing with the floor. There's some places where a lot of the floor is the same, or it changes, but very quickly and um, not for like the whole hallway or something like that. So I definitely feel it can improve, and it's going to improve the more people speak up and have conversations like this.
I think too, I agree as well that there is like different things like ramps or the push button, like as well and all that. As well, like different things like the sidewalks, like the little, I don't know what they're called exactly, but there's like to make sure like for people that are visually, yeah, the bumps. Like if you notice at places that they have that, I mean, it's mostly more newer places, like older places are not as accessible. Like I'm saying, like with the ADA, a lot of things have changed. But at the same time, for me, you know, being on the spectrum as well, I tend to have a lot of sensory overload a lot. So if no one's like familiar with that term, it basically means like if there's too much, like I'm gonna use an example, for example, like lighting. Like sometimes if things are too bright, or if even food too, like there's certain textures, or as well as like just like all that, like the lighting mostly is something that, and even loud noises as well. But mostly when it comes to the architecture aspect, I would say more so the lighting. Like definitely like I think too there could be improvements like making more sensory like friendly rooms like in different buildings, like to kind of have like a relief, like even like to just like relief and let it like to have a place to go at least. I think that would also be really cool to see.
So I'm gonna answer yes, that with the help of ADA, it does help individuals with disabilities in buildings get equal access, but not everybody is the same. So one person might say it's fine, like I might be fine because I'm capable of walking some stairs and a ramp, but there are individuals who have issues that just aren't brave enough to say this isn't helpful enough. Yes, buildings meet the ADA requirement, but there can always be that one more step that helps that one person. So I feel it's important for those individuals to speak out and make a difference, not just help themselves, but the future people who have the same problems.
Kind of going back on what Mason was saying. Yes, ADA's compliances are doing better, but they could improve. Like um, like me, Mason was saying, "Oh, I can do most things. So can I." When the button is not working for the doors, I could maneuver my wheelchair, and open it with my hand because I'm good with my upper body strength. But there's days that the button doesn't work, and there's going to be a person that is not able to use their hand or to open the door. And it's sometimes okay, it works sometimes, and it works other days, but why not all the time? But still, we understand things won't get improved right away, but we have to get there somehow, some way. And also, there's rooms for me also, like these tables. I could get in for my wheelchair, but there's other tables like in the cafeteria. I gotta find these tables to be able to be comfortable and eat comfortably. And sometimes these tables are not available. And also, some classrooms are, I can't reach to the sink to wash my hands if I'm doing a science experiment. And I have to, um, ask a classmate of mine, can you give me a paper towel and wet it and put a little soap in it so I can wash my hands so I don't have to walk out of the classroom and go to the bathroom to just wash my hands. And I can do that, but I want to be in the classroom, be active and stuff like that. So yeah, it is getting better. But we could improve a lot more.
I just have to say that this conversation is amazing. And I believe all of us are here for one reason, because we believe on universal design, we believe in equity, we believe in accessibility. So the more, I mean, I applaud everybody. And the more we talk about it, the more it's going to sink in. You know, one person can make a difference in the world, literally. So us into the architectural side, you into institutional. I mean, we are going to reach a lot of people, and that's extremely important. Now, in my little world that is interior design, I mean, I just heard it, you know, everything. It goes from flooring, it goes from lighting, it goes from the, you know, how the building is put together, how easy it is to navigate or how complicated it is. So it's really being aware. It's what's going to make the difference. And I believe by having these conversations, I mean, there's no way out, right? It's as you mentioned before, we can be disabled. Any of us can be disabled tomorrow. So to open the doors to have a better world for everybody, it's our duty.
As I stated earlier, I think most architectural firms are well informed about the ADA code and law and how to respond to ADA, and we've all become familiar with doing that. But just listening to the different types of accessibility issues and disabilities that we have in the panel today, there are other things to be aware of. And in fact, recently, this past fall, Sylvia and I started an initiative within the firm to see how we can better respond to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And certainly accessibility is a big part of that. And we think that it will actually elevate us as a design firm and respond to some of the issues that we're hearing about from the panel today. So we're in the middle of this initiative right now, and we're actually meeting with experts like Dr. Irvin and some of her counterparts from other colleges as well. And in fact, Sylvia and I presented this to the college presidents earlier this year at their retreat, community college presidents, and we got an overwhelmingly positive response from them. And in fact, at the end of the Q&A session, one of the presidents said that she can't imagine going through a design process through this without looking through this lens of diversity, equity, inclusion again. And so I'll leave you with that, Adam.
I just want to echo the sentiments of how unbelievably important it is to hear from all of you. To get this perspective is what we all need to get better. So I just want to again applaud not you just being here, but it takes a lot to talk about this stuff. So thank you for that. I want to piggyback off something you were saying about college presidents, and this comment is not directed at JJC. This is just directed at all of the institutions that I've worked at. This is something I generally see. It is very easy. It is very, very easy to talk about how important this issue is. But it is also very hard when it actually gets down to the bottom line and you start counting dollars on where they go, that you put your money behind your values. And again, this is not just, I'm not saying this at JJC, but I see this at a lot of places. We have all recognized here at this table that ADA doesn't go far enough. It doesn't. We don't have to go over that again. We know we can do better than that. We know that there are things that we can do that make experiences better for everyone. But that point, right? ADA you have to do. So whenever I'm, having conversations at whatever institution that I'm at, it's easy for me to get dollars for things that by law have to be in place. My fight and my battles are the ones that I need to try to get money for the things that go above and beyond and support everybody. And that's where institutions have to say, okay, if we truly believe in this, then we have to put dollars behind it. We can't just say it's important. We can't just write it in our mission statement. It has to be in our actions. And that's something that I think every college, every institution across the country needs to take into consideration when they're defining what's important to them.
So I would like to add something that even happened this morning when I came in. I met Juan at the Disability Services office and he couldn't get the button to work. And he had to rely on somebody who was there to help him physically open the door or make it easier for him to press the button because he couldn't press it hard enough. So why doesn't the ADA take that extra step and say, hey, architects, you should make it so the doors open automatically on sensors or something? It's those extra steps that people don't think about that can make someone have the same opportunity as anybody else. Because I think accessibility means that someone can do the same thing as everybody else with someone who doesn't have a disability.
Thank you. That was some great answers, some great discussion. The next question we have is, as you are getting older, do you find it harder or easier to adapt to the environment around you with your disability?
I really enjoyed this question because it made me kind of reflect on, to put lightly, like my existence in the built environment. And it's definitely not a one or the other answer. I would say it's harder because I have a lot more experiences now, being a working professional out of school. I'm not really in the bubble of my hometown or with my family. I'm becoming a lot more independent, but then it's coming with, the doors that don't open or the sidewalks that have like a tree uprooting it. But then in some cases, it's not a lot, but it's easier in the sense that I'm doing a better job at understanding my needs and not being afraid to ask for them or advocate for them because I don't know, if I feel like I shouldn't have to fight for access into a building, or I shouldn't have to, bite tooth and nail to like go to the bathroom at a convention hall or something. So it's a tough question to answer, but it's like I could think about this probably for the rest of my life and still go back and forth on, is it easier, is it harder, or is it just like something that I have to deal with and then like take each step and say like, this might have a little bit more of my attention for longer to get the communication and the answers or the outcome that I want. And something that I've been learning is patience during this kind of thing, because it's not as easy of like sending an email and it getting fixed by tomorrow or anything like that, but also not letting that shy away from the importance that it needs to be done eventually. So kind of finding that balance is a struggle on its own, but one that has definitely been keeping my attention and my priority as I kind of go about the different stages of my life, I would say.
For me, this is an interesting question because I have a eye condition that like decreases the older I get. So when I was younger, I actually had full sight and lost started losing it when I was about 7. But then it started to get a lot worse where I actually learned how to use my cane when I was like about 14. And I and now I'm 28, but I not only was always adjusting to my sight, but at every building, like school wise or just any building I would go to, I was learning it with the instructor who's trained to work with people um, who are blind and visually impaired called a orientation mobility instructor. And they would take me to the building or the school that I'm going to and teach me. So like how to get to my classes and everything. And now that like I'm in college and everything, I realize it's gotten easier to learn a building. I remember thinking about when I went to middle school, the middle school I went to, I believe it was in Romeoville. It's called AVO Martinez. I remember when I was there, the school was very dark and very dim. There was like a trail that you could take outside. That was the only bright area, but the actual school was very dark. And back then, my vision was a lot better than it is now, but it was also still, regardless, I've always been night blindness, can't see in the dark or dim light. So it was a lot harder for me to um, walk around that school and everything. But the older I get, I feel like it's improved um, in the way that they do make buildings. Like I mentioned, the floor changes. I've noticed it a lot more frequently. Um, going back to that middle school, I don't think the floor ever changed. And actually going to high school too, I went to Romeoville High School and Plainfield East High School, and from what I remember, the floor never changed unless you went to like the gym or something like that. Um, so those schools were a lot harder for me to um, know like what area I was in, but I also had more vision back then, so I was able to adjust to the school. But now being here at JJC at a college, it's definitely improved in terms of like what accessibility they had, and then that they continue to have the more that I and others advocate. So I feel like the older I get, it's definitely easier to learn the buildings, and things are improving with technology and just different things that we have access to.
Um, I would also say as well, it's gotten easier, but also harder at the same time. So it's a mix of both. Because when I was younger, it was hard for me adapting to my environment, especially, if I had sensory overload, having like those meltdowns and things like that, like how to calm down in those situations. And it's hard because I don't really speak about meltdowns like to other people. And it's hard because I'm like, even though I'm an adult, I want to be able to like, be, like act more like my age, but it's kind of difficult because mentally I don't feel like I'm 20 years old, but it's hard, adjusting to that. But besides, like what I was saying, the accessibility, I think too, like learning everything on my own, learning how to adjust, like being outside. If I know I'm outside for a long period of time, I know I had to have sunglasses or something so that I'm not overstimulated or anything like that. Or also, like, even like, obviously, as well as advocating. But I know it's quite different, having more of an invisible versus visible disability. I know that's something too that's a little bit different because I feel like when, especially like with buildings, like it's more so catered towards the visible, but not the invisible, but also like creating the more like universal, like design for all, not just for people with disabilities, but for everyone. Um, so I think that's like where my challenge is, but also like I've improved, I've learned more about myself, learned more about, okay, it's okay that I'm the way I am. I know it doesn't define me, but it's part of who I am. This is how I grew up knowing that I had a disability most of my life. So I think that's something I had to learn over time, but I also wanted to, yeah, I think that's all I had to say to that.
So I'm going to answer this question with yes and no. So yes, it's harder. Well, I'll start with the no. I don't find it harder as I get older because, like I said, I was 15 when I became disabled or acquired a disability, however you want to phrase it. So over time, I am learning how to adapt to more things. But yes, it's harder because I'm being exposed to more situations. Like I'll take a lab class here at JJC and I knew how to do something similar, but because I'm put into a different situation later in life, then it became harder and I'm restarting the process.
For me, it just depends where I am. At the school, um, it's better for me. That it helps me with my disability. I know how to advocate for myself if I need something because at a very early young age for me, I had to speak up for myself because um I didn't really want my mom to speak for me because I was, as you know now, I'm very vocal. So, and then um, it just depends where I am. Like Chicago, for an example, we went to these Korean corn dogs, me and my family, for Easter Sunday, and there was theirs, but I had to stay in the car because there was no other way to get me out there with this heavy, big wheelchair, and I had to eat in the car on my own with my food, Korean corn dogs. But still, it just depends who you are and where you are. So, and then I don't know, things will improve as I get older, hopefully. Um, they will if I keep a positive mind, as I'm doing right now. So, it just depends where you are for me.
One thing I want to add to that, educationally speaking, the change in laws that students function under make it harder when they come to college. In high school and grade school, individuals with disabilities function under IDEA law. I think I talked a little bit about this last time, which
Yes.
puts far more responsibility on the school to make sure that accessibility is built into everything they do. When you turn 18 and you come to higher ed, you now function under ADA law, and it is far more limiting than the IDEA law. It puts so much more responsibility on the individual with a disability to have to fight for things. And I think you said it, like, you shouldn't have to fight to use the washroom at the convention center, right? I think we underestimate the fight that students have to put up when they function under ADA law after the age of 18. And I think it puts a bigger onus on us as a society to be proactive. They should not have to fight to be heard. They should just be heard like everybody else rather than us reacting to things. And I think ADA is limiting in that sense in comparison to what IDEA, at least educationally, helped support students with.
And just after listening to these things, I just have like 3 words. We need to recognize the disabilities that are around us, who we're going to cater for. So it's recognize, it's embrace, and it's act. So if we all do that, I think this is going to be way better.
Thank you for sharing yourselves and your experiences. We will next have just a couple questions that don't have to be answered down the line, but if anybody would like to answer them, the professionals or you guys, doesn't matter. So the first one would be, what do you think the difference is between the words accessibility and accommodation?
Well, accessibility for me, the difference is that I could go from A to B, to a classroom or wherever I'm going. Um, it has to be there for me to be able for me to access. And then for my accommodations, uh, before I came to JJC, my accommodations were different in high school. Like, um, like I had short, um, short, questions in high school, and when I came here, I have to memorize everything as I possibly can because they're not able to do that for me because of the ADA law and the school law and stuff like that. So I had to adjust to that, but I still had more extra time on tests and stuff like that. So it's kind of bittersweet, but it's just what it is. It's it's you gotta we got to adapt and whatever it is, and if we need help, there are people to help us if we need it.
I will jump in after Juan. And I think that when you talk about physical space, there's a big difference between accommodations and accessibility. And as Juan said, between accessibility is to be able to go from A to B. So that's mostly mobility and being able to get to the spaces, to access a space or access a function. Accommodation, I'm going to go with what Emily is talking about. You know, when we're talking about mental disabilities, when we're talking about the hidden disabilities, is the accommodations happen when you are creating areas where, you know, they're like places to rest, places to, so it's not that you cannot get to the places, it's not that you cannot access those spaces, but it's you're creating those accommodations in order to, you know, create a better environment for that kind of disability. So for us, it's actually very clear what the difference is when we're talking about space between accessibility and accommodation.
I would definitely say with accessibility in general, it's kind of like an overall like view, like basically like how buildings are designed and things like that, like the overall aspect. But accommodations are usually just for an individual based on their own needs. So for me, I did talk about this at the beginning about having an IEP in high school and throughout all my grade school, elementary, middle, and all that. And obviously, everything was done for me. All the case managers that I had, they were the ones that wrote down everything. And they were the ones that were kind of the advocates. But obviously, going into college was such a challenge because I had to be the one to say, okay, I got to make sure that I talk with disability services or I need to do this. And it was hard, challenging, like obviously transitioning from being a high schooler to a college student was not that easy. but definitely, fight for my accommodations. Like, usually I just get extended time. That's usually my main one because for me, like, I did talk about like the ADHD. Like, I did not know I had ADHD throughout all of grade school. And if I knew that earlier, I think it would have been a relief because I think as well, like I said earlier, like a lot of the autism and ADHD are very similar. I mean, they're different, but they're very similar. And I'm very slow to process things. So learning new material, memorizing or studying for a test was extremely challenging, especially because I really struggle with my concentration and it's really hard for me to get homework done. As much as I try, it's not easy. Like even like going to other environments, like not going to my house or going to the library or somewhere else that I can actually focus because I tend to get really distracted and sidetracked a lot of the time while I'm doing things, especially if it's something I don't want to do. I'll tend to waste time more. So I know it's not healthy as well, but I think it's definitely gotten better as I learned more about this new, like learning like this new discovery of myself. So I think that that's all.
Thank you, Sylvia, Juan, and Emily for your input, and Sylvia for the definition of accessibility and accommodation for people who did not know. Um, so for the second question is, what accessibility feature do you like the most?
For me, I like the ramps in the elevators.
I would say I also like the ramp just because even though I technically can take the stairs, depending on like the lighting or if I have like too many things in my hand or something like that, or if there's a crowd going down the stairs, the ramp's just a lot easier. Um, and then also the lighting. There are certain places where it's really bright or like the windows. Like I like when places have a lot of windows. And the sun can come in and everything. So I like things like that. And then when the floor does change from building to building or hallway to hallway, it's really nice for me to know like where I'm going. So I like things like that. And also even the braille on every signage and everything, it helps a lot with the like classrooms or just knowing with the restrooms and things like that. I really appreciate the braille labeling every room.
Oh, and I have to say, the big bathroom in J, the community bathroom, like boys and girls could enter because that's a huge bathroom. The other bathrooms, um, I could fit in, but that's a huge bathroom because the wheelchair could also fit in smoothly, somewhat, and then I could do what I need to do and come out.
A long time ago, the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright was asked the question, "What's your favorite building?" And his answer was the next one. And so my answer to this question would be, once Sylvia and I finish our initiative about designing and planning for diversity, equity, and inclusion, we'll certainly get back to you because that's exactly what we're looking to do. We're looking to see how we can respond with interior spaces and for master planning to see what the next features should be to respond to DEI.
This isn't necessarily architecture, but I consider it infrastructure. So I think it's still, what we have in technology to support individuals with disabilities is really incredible. From not just screen readers, but sip and puff mouses for individuals who don't have the ability to use their hands. Speech to text is just a great feature for certain individuals who may have maybe from processing issues to issues with the use of their hands. and more investments into the technologies that we have, I think, is some of the best. It really closes gaps for students, and especially when we're talking about the growth of online classes and online material, making sure that we continue to spend money on the programs that allow that type of accessibility, I think is important too.
All right, so our next question is, what accessibility feature do you think can be improved?
I definitely have one. I don't know if there's one on this campus, but at IIT we had a thing called a stramp, which first thing I would change the name. Second is it's like the stairs are pretty wide and it doesn't matter how many, but then it's like the ramp is kind of like interweaving in between the stairs. And I think like societally, everyone thinks it's like this huge feat. And it's really great because like everything's just as one, but if you use it functionally, it's probably one of the worst things I've ever experienced because there's like nothing preventing you from literally going down the stairs instead. Or for me, something that I think a lot of features, if I could change something about them, it would be kind of the performance of it all, like taking like a stair lift or taking one of those, like I think I saw one somewhere in my tour today, kind of those box lifts. And kind of when I feel like, or when I'm using one, I kind of just feel like I'm on display, like I'm a zoo animal almost, like a performance art that I didn't want to be part of. And especially on like the stair ramp, um, it's just like, because if you use the stairs, it's like just up and down. But then if you're using the ramp, you're literally going like zigzagging for however long you need to zigzag. And it's just really inconvenient. And at IIT, I even talked to some of the food workers and they hate it as well, like using the food carts to go up and down it. And so that kind of goes off of what we've talked about, like how accessible design and universal design is not just for people with disabilities, but anyone can use it. So I think my answer is easy because I've thought about this for many years since I was at IIT. Um, but if you guys experience it, even if you're using the stairs, like your like rhythm of using the steps is broken up by the ramp. So it's like it's not even a smooth like feature for anyone, no matter what path you're taking. So I don't know if anyone else has used one, but I would not recommend it.
If I could add something, so Esley and I have been working with JJC on fixing the braille that labels the rooms throughout the school. I don't know if Esley wants to continue the conversation with that, but it's something that has been a problem and is finally being resolved soon. Esley, do you want to?
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that I would say Braille can definitely be improved for the most part from what I seen, felt um, on like restrooms and uh, classrooms and things like that. There usually is Braille, but like Mason mentioned, there's Braille in the classroom for classrooms here, but there's no Braille for like what offices um are in the like what each office is. And then also Braille for vending machines. I feel like in many places that can be improved. I always get excited when I end up finding one with Braille because I haven't been around too many places that have Braille on the vending machines or even like Braille. I know my mom works at a hotel and like there's Braille in the hotel for the hotel rooms, but no um, Braille for like um, the the keys. I feel like there should be some kind of Braille or tactile thing to know like what key, like if I were to get a key that it was for my room, I would feel like having that in Braille would be very beneficial. Just Braille in many different areas I feel like can be very helpful. Just labeling rooms and um, hallways even, like, because I know here just from being described to me, there's like signs that say each building, like what letters, hallways there are, and I don't think they have them in Braille, but that would be very helpful just for any places that have signs like that are usually high up or something like that, to have it in Braille, or even like some kind of tactile map or something. And then even the lighting, I was just thinking about this, like for if every room had like some kind of switch where you can turn it up and down, to like dimmer lighting or brighter lighting. I feel like that would be helpful in terms of me, depending on the day, because sometimes I can use bright light, but other times the bright light actually bothers me. So the lighting and the Braille, I feel like can definitely be improved in many places.
And for me, the push buttons. Um, there's push buttons in a testing center and in the disability services office, but not many offices has those push buttons. And I feel like they should have those push buttons because we just don't go to the testing center or to the disability services. We go to the career center and the J buildings also, or anywhere in the building. It should be more push buttons in the access. And but I understand it's about money, it's about everything, but that should change one of these days. And also the ramps. The ramps are not big enough. Um, for me, it's great, but there's other students or other faculty members that like to use the ramps, and which is okay with me. But when they see a person coming with a disability, especially with a chair or a cane, they keep continue walking and they want to go down the ramps. And I'm like, okay, I understand, but you see this huge wheelchair, I need to go first. Then you could go, because otherwise we're gonna ram together, and I'm gonna be, I mean, you're gonna be mad at me because I ran you over, and I'm like, well, you came straight at me. You knew I was coming, and you were on your phone, and you're like, that's my fault. I don't think so, but it is what it is. That's how our society works. But one day it will be change. One day will change. Just got to keep the faith.
A couple of things. One thing that actually Esley had brought to our attention that I thought was that was the first time I'd heard was audible announcements on the elevators. It's very hard to navigate the physical space of an elevator to reach out and find out exactly what floor you're on when you have 4 people in the elevator in front of you. And you know that door, it's already the timing of everyone's trying to get out before the door closes on. Like, it's not a comfortable situation. I thought that was really interesting. And I just want to echo what was said about the lifts. Those are brutal. And the spotlight it puts on an individual with a disability. We used to have that at one of the institutions I worked at in the past, and like you turn it on and be like make all this noise. It felt like a semi truck was coming through, and everyone's eyes are all turning over, and like I wasn't even the one, and I felt the eyes. Like, I can't even imagine like actually being the individual. And I think that the way we can continue to think about things like that, to just interweave the physical architecture into the everyday life of everybody using it, because sometimes it feels separate. And I don't think we should underestimate the emotion behind that as well.
A couple hours ago, Rachel and I stopped for lunch at the cafeteria before the meeting here, and we both decided to order some subs from the kiosks outside in the hallway outside of the food service area there, the servery. And the height of the kiosk was just fine for me, but it was a little bit more difficult for Rachel to navigate. So that's one improvement that I would suggest here. I think these were added recently, like within the past year.
I also want to add something. One accessibility feature I really think needs to be improved is having more areas like to recharge. Like what I was saying earlier was having those sensory friendly rooms and having those places where you can just relax and calm down before you had to move on with your day. I really think that's really important because this is something I never really thought about till recently, and I think that would really help a lot for people that do need it as well as myself. So I think that's what I would say as something that needs to be improved, like accessibility wise.
And something that we all keep talking about is universal design, and this is a great example of it. Not only you will benefit from those rooms, but I will too. So, I mean, not as you mentioned, Adam, too, we all benefit of every single accessibility or accommodation. So it's really understand, what's easier for us to navigate in any condition. And I just want to say something too, by listening to the panel, is the strength that the disabilities give you, your inside strength is unbelievable. So what you're going to be doing in life, I mean, we all have hurdles. Life is not perfect for everybody, for nobody. And we all go through struggles, but what you're going through is just making you stronger and stronger and stronger. So I can see, you're going to reach the stars just because you already know how to fight for them. So I applaud each one of you.
For our next question is there anything you think should be added as an accessibility feature?
I think this comes back to the individuals standing up and saying, this may work for someone else, but it doesn't work for me. Now, that doesn't apply to me, but I know that there are people who don't get the accessibility that they need, but they're too shy or too afraid to tell somebody who's in charge and say, this needs to be changed. It's the whole, I'm too afraid to ask for help, but people need to know that they need the help, so they need to be brave enough to ask for it.
All right, and then our last question is, what role can a student play in breaking the negative stigma of a disability?
Student could play if they see somebody with a disability, get to know them first. You might be surprised what you hear from them because you could suspect things, but you could be wrong, and not everybody's the same. And as I said before in the beginning, uh, we're all here for a reason, and we all have to work together get to get to where we're going in this world.
Can I quickly add an advertisement to join Disability Awareness Club and keep an open mind about learning? That's all I wanted to add. Mondays.
Something I would say is everything that you learned today, or at least got something out of, you can take it with you and use it like share with a friend or just let someone know. I feel like that's important. Like we're here discussing everything, but it's not just something that needs to be stay here. Like we need to actually like make more action and like Juan said, get to know the individual with a disability, like just come talk to us and like we'll be more than willing to talk to you. And then throughout getting to know them, you usually get to find out more and like have a discussion similar to this, like without like making it seem like you're trying to like question them or anything like that. Like that's usually how it happens when you get to know them. But yeah, actually taking the information that we're hearing today and using it wherever you go, no matter like who you come across, we're all gonna come across people when we leave here and just sharing it with people and actually making action on it.
Also, I really think that to break down the stigma, we need to educate people more on disabilities. I think society, there's a lack of understanding of disabilities and people feeling misunderstood, especially because for me being someone with an invisible disability, I feel like sometimes I may not be taken seriously because it may not seem like it's visible or anything, but it still affects me from the inside. Even if people don't see it from the outside, it still affects me internally. And I really think that just breaking down those stereotypes and everything and realizing that, yeah, like we need to be able to have more of these discussions like this as well and realize that it is very important, for society to understand not just accessibility, but everything regarding disabilities, everything regarding accommodations, everything basically. So I think that we need to make sure that we're able to speak up about these issues because I think that we need to bring this up. If not, then things are never going to change.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, I think that not just students, but society as a whole should understand that people with disabilities are not as fragile as they think we are. I think that, I mean, I'm not advocating to go up to someone in a wheelchair and just like ask about their whole life story, but I think that there's no way to go forward with breaking the stigma without getting a little uncomfortable first. I think that, acknowledging their disability, but also letting them know that that's not the number one indicator that you think of when you are talking to them. I know that that's something that I like personally had a really hard time like believing my friends when they said that. Um, like when I went to college, that's like my first step into the real world without my family, and everyone was like, "We don't even notice your wheelchair, or, like we don't even notice like XYZ," and I was just like, "Oh, but you're my friends, like you have to say that." And they're like, "No, we don't. That's just how we feel." Um, so just like someone said before, like we all have our differences, and being disabled doesn't make you lesser than someone else's differences. And um, like something that I would have loved to do in school if the pandemic didn't um, come around before I graduated, but I really wanted to try and do like a workshop with some of my classes and like rent like a couple wheelchairs or crutches or something like that and just say like, hey, try and get from A to B in the chair and like write down what you think, like is anything like is it as easy as you thought, or like try to go like around the building to the accessible entrance while like the revolving doors are right in front of you. And just like kind of how we talked about like, that performance of having to go around like another 30 feet, or, like everyone's like funneling through the revolving door and you're like that one lone person like going all the way around out of your way. So I think that maybe students, because it seems like, I don't know, like not to be like generational, but I feel like, people these days are a lot like the younger people are a lot more open and more vulnerable and are willing to have these conversations that could set up, the next group of students to come along, or that will like bleed into the older groups that haven't had these conversations yet.
One of the things that Sylvia and I have begun to explore in our DEI initiative that we've learned is that there's a need for safe spaces on college campuses, but there's also a need for intersectional spaces, and where whether it's students with disabilities or other underrepresented students can come together. And I think events like this is an intersectional type event. And I applaud the college for having events like this, but I think this can play a role, in breaking that negative stigma. But hopefully we're going to find other ways in terms of physical space that can help contribute to this as well.
And I think one of the last things I want to say that doesn't have to do anything with interior design or architecture is something to be aware of is disability doesn't define who people is. It just happens to be a condition that people have. But as Juan was mentioning at the beginning of this, is we all looking for the same success. We're looking for the same love. We're looking for a beautiful life. And the interesting part is we all are different because we all have different talents. So that disability is not going to take away your talent. And I believe by recognizing what your talent is and embracing that talent, especially in a college level, that's what's going to make you successful in life. So instead of concentrating on a disability, we need to concentrate on the talents and support those talents while we're in college so we can be successful in life. But again, I mean, we're all the same. It's just, the body or something that doesn't work, but that will be one of, again, doesn't have to do anything with architecture or interior design, but I think you have to have that empathy and that belief in order to do your job in a right way.
I mean, this is kind of mentioned in so many words, but the empathy training is unbelievably important. Working with students with disabilities, I see firsthand the effects of a negative stigma on an individual's sense of self, and seeing how individuals can internalize a negative stigma that others put on them creates unnecessary barriers for people with disabilities. And having others start to learn and understand how comments, looks, right, scoffing at someone, things that we can do like that resonates inside somebody. And that affects the way they feel about themselves. And the more that we can do to teach that type of empathy, I think is important. And in the end, not in the end, but unfortunately, I say this, unfortunately, one of the things that students can do to break the stigma is to fight and push back. I don't want you to have that fight. I hate that you have to have that fight, but it's the reality of the society that we live in. And the more that we fight back, we push back, and we don't accept that negative stigma as a reality, I think the more we can continue to work towards educating people.
I just wanted to add one more thing that about that. I think because throughout my life, I always struggled with like I'm so much like it's just I had really low self-esteem growing up. I just felt like because I was like, oh, I'm so limited to what I can do, and it was just hard for me to like accept that I had a disability because I never, like when I was younger and all that, finding out, I had a disability, it was hard to understand because I was like, I wish I was never born with a disability. I would always like, be complaining or be like really angry about having a disability. But then once I got into college and joined the Disability Awareness Club, it really helped me open up for the better. And I've changed as a person. I realized obviously my disability doesn't define me, but I still want to be open about it and accept that part of myself. And I think the acceptance is so important for people with disabilities because it helps us to understand, okay, even though we're different than the neurotypical society, we're still able to still have, we can still do anything else that anyone else can do. So I think that not like putting those limitations just because of a barrier, I think anything can be possible if someone works hard and achieves what they want to do. So I think that's all I got to say.
Just to add on, like, I don't know about the other panelists, but I know that a big word like in the disabled community is burden, and like calling ourselves burdens to our friends or our family, or maybe even to yourself. And like you have to have a really good support system to make you not believe that, like to your core. But it's really easy to slip into like that negative, like believe like the societal stigma around it, even though you know like deep down like what you're capable of. And like just because you have a disability doesn't mean you're like disabled from anything else. And I think maybe students, because like when I was looking at colleges, my university, like they're the head of the disability office, like only knew how to work with students with learning and cognitive disabilities. So it's like I took a big chance like choosing that university. But then that meant that, I had a bigger hurdle mentally and emotionally, um, to ask my friends to like push me with them to classes, or, like leave lunch a little early to get to one place to another. And I think that students, and I know Adam's done a really great job talking in the last two panels about, the struggle that students have to go through, but how staff can also really affect students' experiences, and making it feel less of a burden on us, but just like a opportunity to work with these really great staff and faculty to help out as best as they can. Um, so um, I think that once society knows that disabilities are not just like an individual thing to work through, it's kind of like it takes a village, if you will, and just like provides those safe spaces and those communities, for people with disabilities to feel like they're not just like in their own bubble for their whole life.
And to ask questions, personally, you can ask me anything about my disability and I am fully open. I'll answer any questions for you. That may not be the case for some people, but they will let you know that they are not comfortable. And it's just everybody that in order to learn, you have to keep an open mind and take that initiative to ask those questions. Can I open the door for you? Can I do this? What do you need? How can I help? Stuff like that. You'll learn more about the disability community and you'll be able to help not just yourself, but others.
Thank you all for your insights and your perspectives. We would now like to open the conversation to anyone on the floor. If anyone has a question, and for those in the virtual audience, you can post your questions in the chat.
So do you guys think that there's any benefit to sharing this kind of awareness to a younger audience, such as like middle schoolers? Not just about but like disabilities, but mental illnesses as well.
Absolutely, yes. Because as getting older and getting towards an adult, you need to expose everyone to know that there's going to be some struggles, but also there's going to be rewards. Uh, and to to see someone younger than you and they looking up to you, oh, I could do this. Oh, yes, you can. I mean, they really need to know, and it's kind of tough because there are parents out there that uh, shield themselves, shield their kids from disabilities, and it's kind of hard to open their eyes once they get older. But absolutely, yes, we should have it some type of forum like this for all different types of ages, all different types of disabilities and mental disabilities and everything. So, yep.
I just want to add to that the younger you start, the better, because even funny enough, children don't see disabilities. They don't see the difference. So I think one of the stigma started because everything kind of gets covered when they're children, and so that's why everybody's kind of like on the edge to do or think or say or recognize. But if this is open, I would say not middle school. I mean, we're talking about pre-kindergarten, you know. I mean, if this is an open conversation, it just makes everybody, they grow being part of it.
When I was in middle school, we had two elementary schools into one, and like I despised gym class just because of the shorts. And like the first day, like someone asked what was wrong with me. So as Sylvia said, if you could start that sooner, the conversation, I think that would definitely help a lot of kids' self-esteems and their confidence. Um, and also like I have a 10-year-old niece, and like she asks if I need a hand with anything, or she just like asks if I'm like okay, or if I want to sit down, like, but it's just natural to her because she's been exposed to it. So I think that, yeah, if you can start the conversation, almost like, I don't know if like it's the same, but like almost like learning a language, like people want to get their kids starting on that like as soon as they can, because like then it's just integrated into their brain and their life. So like this, even though it should be natural, like everyone should learn about it. Like if we can start that conversation sooner now, it'd only be better for everyone moving forward.
Yeah, I want to just add to that. I think especially in 4th through 6th grade, when kids really start to recognize sort of where they fit socially, they start to form groups, they start to identify within groups socially. That's a really important in the DEI space in general, what it means to have a disability, what it means to have this religious background, right? And that age is where you can see sometimes the vicious behavior of a fourth, like not because they're vicious kids, but because they're learning how to communicate and what it means for me to be me and you to be you. That age, I think, is the real sweet spot, I think, to really start to get them to think about what I mean and what you mean in this social circle.
I also want to say too that I think, yes, it is important we teach, especially that age group, especially like 4th, 5th grade or middle school in general. I think that's the age when the students start understanding things like more. And I think that for me, honestly, like throughout elementary school was fine and everything, but then as soon as I got to middle school, just everything changed. And socially was so challenging because you're going through so many things. You're trying to figure yourself out. And it was tough because obviously, like, it's hard to say this, it may sound cliche, but like obviously they'll have like those AK popular kids or whatever that it's kind of feel like they would like exclude other people from other things, or it's like even then, like I know not just myself, but I know other people who've been bullied as well, whether they have a disability or not. And I think it's just tough because in this generation, if they're not educated like on the disabilities or other related things, then it just they're going to continue to say all these comments. And honestly, it was just hard for me because I feel like even in classrooms as well, like I felt like I hated like doing group work. I don't want to say that word like the hated, but I'm just gonna say it just for the sake of
dislike
or dislike. I should say dislike. I apologize, but anyway, dislike group work, because especially because it's not that I don't like working with people. It's just really hard for me to make the initiative to go up to someone and say, hey, can you be my partner or whatever. I've always had a hard time communicating with people socially. So I think that it's just hard because I felt like I was excluded from a lot of things because of that. And I feel like some teachers just don't get it. Like they don't understand. Even special education teachers still don't understand either. And I think that it's just tough because even though they're going into this profession where they're helping people with disabilities, but sometimes they don't even help either. So I think it's just hard because it's not just like just your regular general teachers, it's also your special education teachers, like, especially when they're in college, like learning everything, like they should be able to have those courses on how can they better teach students. Well, not just a general thing, like a bit a generic thing, but just like overall, like universal as well, like how to work better with students and how to approach it.
Thank you guys for your courage and for sharing and educating us on so much tonight. I have a question for you guys. Um, have you thought of an idea that would help with accessibility that's kind of really innovative and out of the box, maybe futuristic, that you feel will help either with your disability or another individual's disability?
I personally cannot think of anything like that. You're thinking like something really outside the box, like something that might occur in like 50 years, right?
How about a floating floor like Adam
Yeah,
presented on the
that's what I
first
was
event,
thinking.
right in the middle of the campus?
Totally sounds like homework. But for example, right now we're just talking, and it can be little things like this. You know, we were talking about the Braille sign, and we're talking about the correlation between line and sight. So has everybody thought about Braille and having some kind of light next to it so it can be easy to reach, right? So there are like little things like that. Two bigger things. I mean, I don't know, has anybody, if you're familiar with the Guggenheim Museum in New York, the whole museum, no, what it is literally, and you say it back, the whole museum is a ramp. So literally you go, I mean, it's like, how can I, it's like a, yeah, but literally it just goes.
Spiral.
A spiral, thank you. So literally it's a spiral that takes you down or takes you up, and it's just a ramp. You don't go into these exhibits, you don't go into anywhere. It's amazing. And it goes from little things to buildings. So again, those are the challenges. It's amazing building.
To respond to your question in another way, Dr. Irvin, as we think about safe spaces, as I listen to each one of the panelists today, I think the idea of a safe space is going to be different for every one of the panelists that we have here today, and so that's really something meaningful for us, as we continue on with this initiative. And so I'm not sure what it means in terms of accessibility yet, or any one of the other panelists' issues, but that's what we're here to explore.
And it looks like we have a question and general comment here in the chat that I'll read. It's from Otis, who is actually a former Disability Awareness Club member. He is now at Lewis. Hoping things are going well for you at Lewis, Otis. His comment is, good afternoon and happy, wonderful Wednesday. First and foremost, thank you all for making this event happen and making an impact in the community. Well deserved. His question for the panelists, what keeps you motivated and happy while living in the moment? Peace, love, and light to all of you.
Well, for me, what keeps me going is my family and my faith, because a little background about me. Um, Me personally, I never thought I would make this far, and also my 8th grade manager told my mother, um, "Well, your son will graduate, will never graduate from high school. only with a certificate of completion, and the farthest he would go is work at a fast food restaurant, and which is great for the fast food people. Um, my condolences to them, and also, but the way she said it to my mother, she said a few choice words, of course, but um, she was kind of predicting my future instead of me predicting it for myself. And uh, yes, it's hard uh, day to day. Sometimes I don't want to get up in bed. I want to stay in bed and lay down. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got this far. I'm almost finished. I'm almost towards the finish line. So I need to get up, go to school, um, be an active member of the Joliet community. Um, and I have not a respect between my mom because it's hard having a disability child. Uh, um, she she doesn't only have me. She has two. She has another child with he was diagnosed with retinoblastoma. That means cancer in the eyes. So um he's not totally blind, but partially blind because he got his right eye taken out, and he has to uh, learn how to see with his left eye and learn braille and stuff like that. And so if it wasn't for my parents pushing me and doing what I need to do, I wouldn't be here today talking to you all. So that's what motivates me every day in my daily day basis. I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm here for a reason. And this reason is probably showing all different kinds of people that we're all the same and we're all one big family.
What motivates me is my family as well, my faith in God, and my friends. Honestly, my like just a lot of people that I come across. I know being here, like I have not met, if not any or too many people that I like don't get along with or don't feel comfortable with or something like that. So just coming here, a lot of people have really motivated me to keep going. My family has really had too, and a lot of my friends, like being someone who's partially blind, like I still have a little bit of sight, but not enough to like read, print, or really see like what's going on around me that well or anything like that. So every day, like I'm just motivated with like the people around me being able to still function every day. I mean, even though I have certain accommodations, like even going to just different outings or things like that, I may need more assistance or something, but still having the ability to live every day just like everyone else, just differently. And literally, I'm always just motivated, even in myself, because I always end up finding, whether someone helps me or not, I usually end up finding a way to accomplish basically everything, even though it may be a more difficult way or just a way different way than other people. But I always end up finding a way, and I just really appreciate, honestly, everyone around me all the time and everyone in my life because they give me encouragement and just the positive words and everything, but also being able to find a way to literally see without seeing. I'm very grateful for all of that. But yeah, I just feel like every day people are constantly motivating me and they don't even know it. Even my friends, my members in my club, and just everyone around me is it's always giving me motivation to keep going, even though I'm pretty positive as it is. There's days where I may be a little bit more negative or just wishing I could see or something like that. But just I'm very grateful for everyone in my life because they motivate me every single day.
I would also say too, it's hard to stay motivated, especially with school, but I think too having a good support system, my family especially, for helping me so much throughout my whole entire life, especially because like Juan said, there's been teachers in the past who have kind of, especially at those IEP meetings, there's been when I was younger actually, they would say things like I should only be in this program, and my mom was like, no, she's capable of being in a general education classroom. And because of that, I'm where I am here today. And believe it or not, I actually, when I was younger, I didn't have like when my parents found out like I had signs of autism, I actually was able to speak for the first months of my life, and then until I was like around 18 months, I believe, is when I lost my, um, let me see, I stopped speaking. And then obviously that was a huge sign as well. I know this doesn't happen to everyone who's on the spectrum, but it does happen to some. And I think, I was able to regain my voice somehow. It just happened because I truly think it's a miracle because I'm using my voice today to help others and speak up. And I think that just don't like not putting those limitations on myself, but saying, okay, I can do it, as well as my friends as well here. And I want to just say something with JJC, I think this has been such a great school. And I really think that if it wasn't for this club, I wouldn't be here where I am. I'd still probably be my old self. But I honestly think that it's really helped me get out of my comfort zone, but in a good way that I think that opening up, talking more, not being this reserved person. I mean, of course, I still can be, but I definitely think that I am more open about myself and about all the things that I've gone through, my challenges. And I think my self esteem has gone up so much coming into college more than ever in my life. So I think that I just want to thank everyone and also like my faith as well and all that.
I will start out by saying what motivates me. Um, don't tell her this, but my mother's tough love at times, pushing my boundaries farther than I knew I could go, but she's a mom, so she knows everything. And I definitely get like kind of humbled with, opportunities and events like this to meet other people in the community. Even though we're one of the most underserved, like minority groups out there, there's still people, even like something that could feel just like in a small setting of like JJC with the Disability Awareness Club, like just talking to this and like everyone that's here and online that are hearing these, like it's much bigger than your own personal bubble. And I've definitely made a lot of friends and connections having these conversations, whether it's in like a more formal setting or if it's just like passing by at like an event. Like no matter how big or small or intense like this topic is talked about, like any little kind of nugget can go a long way. And I've had a lot of friends in school tell me that, like, hey, can you come look at my design? Like, after we went here and there, like I realized that like it's not designed for and we need to change that and make it more normal. So like, do you think that like this is realistic? And like something as little as that about a project that will never be built, um, or even leave the walls of the classroom, like it makes me know that people are listening and are actively willing to move forward in a more inclusive way and share what they learn with their network. And it's just really like eye-opening for me to see, even though I'm in this community, but like knowing no matter how tough like the days feel, Like at one point before 1990, like there was no ADA. So I can only imagine like the next big movement to come. And with, everyone being in a more vocal kind of mindset, I think that like it's not just going to be for the physically disabled, but it's going to be for everyone, disabled or not. And that just really gets me excited, even for the tooth and nails to come. But I know that we're going to move forward, and a lot of people are going to see change that they are putting in the time for now. And that's just really exciting.
Thank you for those questions, and thank you for the panelists for sharing your experiences and how you feel. It is so beneficial and helpful to hear this feedback about what works and what doesn't. That way, future architects, designers, educators, people, and just children in general can create spaces that function and accommodate everyone. This second event has showed us all how important raising awareness for disability is in conjunction with architecture and much more we have seen. There's no better way than hearing the experiences and perspectives from people. That way, design can constantly improve and provide a better and safer environment for everyone.
I just like to say thank you to all the student panelists for being brave to speak about this very important subject. So I would like for everyone to give them a round of applause for the. Thank you for the professionals also for giving insight and how we can also improve for them. And it's beneficial for everyone, how everyone says it's universal design, but it can help anyone in anyone's situation. So hearing the student's perspective is important, not just to hear what they go through and feel, but be able to understand and comprehend what they go through and how their voices should be heard, and also have an impact on how they live their lives with opportunities or setbacks given. This event wouldn't be possible without the combined efforts with the DAC, the AIAS, the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Compliance, the Office of Disability Services, and our student panelists and our 5 professional speakers. If everyone can give a round of applause again to all those who made this event possible, thank you.
I think you summed it up pretty well. I don't have too much to say. Just thank you to all those that attended both a couple weeks ago and today. This is a really cool event, and I just want to be clear that this event was started by 2 student-led clubs. They came together, had this idea, and it came to fruition. And I couldn't be more excited and more proud of the event and how it took place. So kudos to all of you. Kudos to our panelists. And many thanks to all involved, including our professional speakers. Again, thank you for attending both virtually and or in person. Take care.